All right. So, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. It's about 9:30 p.m. where I'm at right now, September 10th, 2024. And tomorrow is a historic day. It's a day that we remember the day that America sent the CIA, or used the CIA to help overthrow the democratically elected leader of Chile, Salvador Allende, that ushered in a totalitarian fascist regime in Chile led by Pinochet, the dictator who ruled for a few decades there. So September 11th is a day that we will always remember in infamy as a day of horrible repression against democratic movements. But also today, on September 10th, we will have the first debate between Vice President Kamala Harris versus 45th President Donald Trump. And it's going to be a historic moment. I don't know what to expect. Hopefully, she does better than Joe. I think a lot of people have very high expectations that Kamala is going to destroy Trump in the debate. I don't know. I'm going to try to stay up to watch it. It's going to be 3 a.m. my time when they go live. And I like to watch everything on 2X. So it's hard for me to just sit there and watch these people drone on for an hour and a half. But I might catch the replay. Yeah, looking forward to watching it. And going now to the chat. I got the chat open here. My guy Avery Adams said, he a fan, he a fan, he a fan. But damn, I'm going to miss this today. Stay blessed and positive. Shout out to Avery Adams. He also left a $20 super chat donation that's going straight towards the Send Simon Hill to College Fund. If you guys think I'm stupid, if you guys think I'm ignorant, if you guys think I'm not intelligent, how about this? I'm going to college. I'm going to college again right now at the age of 33, and I turned 34 on Saturday. By the way, my birthday is on Saturday. And yeah, if you don't like what I have to say and you think I need more education because white supremacists, racists, and anti-black racists always think that black people are not intelligent, why don't you do a good job by helping send a young black man to school so I can get educated? How about that? Now, for today, we are jumping back into the book react series. I haven't done this in a while because I've been hella busy with English classes I'm teaching, going to university, smacking my big booty wife up and down, going to the gym, all that good stuff, right? And yeah, I haven't had time to do much reading, but I think we still can cover 10 books at least this year, which is the goal for the book react series. The book react series is where we read a text cover to cover and give live reactions to the stories, right? The last book react we did was Donald Trump's Crippled America, the book he released back in 2016 before he became president. Before that, if I remember right, it was Is the Turk a White Man by Murat Erdogan. Which is exactly what you think it's about. And before that, it was the book Hood, written by, I believe, a girl named Allison Taylor. And it was about the symbolism of hoods. And the very first book we read was Cyber Racism by Jesse Daniels. All of those books were pretty damn good, though I had some issues and things that I didn't like that I read within them. But that's the point of this. We challenge ourselves in the text, we learn from the text, and we grow with the text. All right. So today, we're going to be reading Kamala Harris's book, I believe her only book, and it's a memoir. Though if there is another memoir, point me in that direction. But this is her first book, and it's about her life story. And I think it's important for us to read it because we did the same for Donald Trump. So if anybody wants to come in here and say Simon Hill is a Democratic shill, all Simon Hill does is push Democratic talking points. Simon Hill, the Democratic shill, all that talking points. If you think that, go watch the video, his life story, or whatever he wanted to share with us. And if you don't like Kamala, go enjoy what we had to say about Trump, okay? Because this channel is fair and balanced. I don't have any other sponsors other than live chats y'all give me and the views that y'all give me that help support me on this journey. So, let's get into it. The Truths We Hold, An American Journey, written by Kamala Harris, though I'm pretty sure she had a ghostwriter as well. All right. Here's another book she wrote, Smart on Crime, A Career Prosecutor's Plan to Make Us Safer. Okay, but that doesn't sound like a memoir. It sounds more like a policy book, talking about her experiences as a prosecutor in California. So let's continue here. This book was published in 2019 from Penguin Press. And who is this book dedicated to? To my darling husband, Doug. Thank you for always being patient, loving, supportive, and calm. And most of all, for your sense of the funny. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Let's jump ahead here. Yeah, we're gonna read the preface. Usually, I don't read the prefaces, but let's soak up as much as we can from Miss Kamala. So, most mornings, my husband Doug wakes up before me and reads the news in bed. If I hear him making noises, a sigh, a groan, a gasp, I know what kind of day it's going to be. November 8th, 2016 had started well, the last day of my campaign for the U.S. Senate. I spent the day meeting as many more voters as I could, and of course, cast a vote myself at a neighborhood school up the street from our house. We were feeling pretty good. We had rented a huge place for my election night party, with a balloon drop waiting to go. But first, I was going out for dinner with family and close friends, a tradition dating back to my first campaign. People had flown in from all across the country, even overseas, to be with us. My aunts and cousins, my in laws, my sisters in laws, and more all gathered for what we hoped would be a very special night as we dressed in saris and stirred the curry with our bare hands. I'm joking. I'm joking. We just flew in, Kamala, to come and congratulate you on becoming a senator. Okay, I'm sorry. There's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of bad Indian jokes throughout this thing. Anyway, it's going to be a long night. Long night. So I was staring out the car window, reflecting on how far we'd come, when I heard one of Doug's signature groans. "You got to look at this," he said, handing me his phone. Early results for the presidential election were coming in. Something was happening, something bad. By the time we arrived at the restaurant, the gap between the two candidates had shrunk considerably, and I was inwardly groaning as well. The New York Times probability meter was suggesting it was going to be a long, dark night. I'll never forget, how I felt waking up the next morning uh, on November 5th, whatever day after the election, right? And yeah, just feeling like a pit in my stomach, like feeling sick. Like I didn't imagine America could be so racist, so xenophobic. You get what I'm saying? By letting Trump win. Anyway, we settled in for a meal in a small room off the main restaurant. Emotions and adrenaline were running high, but not for the reasons we had anticipated. On the one hand, while polls hadn't yet closed in California, we were optimistic that I was going to win. Yet, even as we prepared for that hard earned celebration, all eyes were on our screens as state after state came back with numbers that told a troubling story. At a certain point, my 9-year old godson, Alexander, came up to me with big tears welling in his eyes. I assumed one of the other kids in our group had been teasing him about something. "Come here, little man, what's wrong?" Alexander looked up and locked eyes with mine. His voice was trembling. "Auntie Kamala, that man can't win. He's not going to win, is he?" Alexander's worry broke my heart. I didn't want anyone making a child feel that way. 8 years earlier, many of us had cried tears of joy when Barack Obama was elected president. And now to see Alexander's fear. That's America for you, man. That's the thing about democracy, or whatever we have resembling democracy, right? Faux democracy, bourgeoisie democracy. Um, uh, Kleptocracy, oligarchy with democratic features, whatever we have, right? You win some, you lose some, and you sort of just deal with it, right? I'll never forget the first election I remember. I stayed up late with my mom. Watching Gore v. Bush, right? And we were sort of happy, jumping up and down when Gore was winning, right? I was about 10 years old or whatever. And yeah, when Florida came up and everything crazy was happening in Florida, like the night went bad, right? And then a few weeks later, the Supreme Court steals the election for Bush, and the rest is history, right? And then a few years later, we get Obama, right? And it's like everybody's happy, excited, except if you're growing up in the deep South, where like the assistant principal calls like the police to help monitor the high school because they're worried that the black students will riot because Obama is getting sworn in, all that sort of stuff. Like anyway, continuing here. So his father, Reggie, and I took him outside to try to console him. "Alexander, you know how sometimes superheroes are facing a big challenge because a villain is coming for them? What do they do when that happens? They fight back," he whimpered. "That's right. And they fight back with emotion, because all the best superheroes have big emotions just like you. But they always fight back, right? So that's what we're going to do." Shortly after the Associated Press called my race, we were still at the restaurant. "I can't thank you all enough for being with me me every step of the way, all the time, all the time. I told my incredibly loving and supportive family and friends. It means so much to me. I was overwhelmed with gratitude, both for the people in that room and the people I had lost along the way, especially my mother. I tried to savor the moment, and I did. I did, if briefly. But like everyone else, I soon turned my eyes back to the television. After dinner, we headed to our election night venue where more than 1,000 people had gathered for the party. I was no longer a candidate for office. I was a U.S. Senator elect, the first black woman from my state, and the second in the nation's history to earn that job. I had been elected to represent more than 39 million people, roughly one out of every 8 Americans from all backgrounds and walks of life. It was and is a humbling and extraordinary honor. My team clapped and cheered as I joined them in the green room behind the stage. It all still felt more than a little surreal. None of us had fully processed what was happening. They formed a circle around me as I thanked them for everything they'd done. We were a family too, and we had been through an incredible journey together. Some of the folks in the room have been with me since my first campaign for district attorney, but now, almost 2 years after the start of our campaign, we had a new mountain to take. I just want to go back to the line. I want to go back to the line where she says, she was the first black woman elected as a senator from California. I don't know where people are coming from saying that Kamala never identified as black. I did not read this book ahead of time, but I skimmed through a few pages, and all she does is refer to herself as black. She didn't say, I was the first half black, half Indian woman. She didn't say I was the first Indian woman. She didn't say I was the first mixed woman or multiracial woman. She said black, right? And I think a lot of mixed people actually have that option to some degree. A lot of mixed people, not people that are half black, half white, right? But people that are, maybe half black, half Indian, whatever, right? In some cases, in some circumstances, you can choose to identify more with your other side that is non black because of how you pass, right? I think Kamala could pass as an Indian woman to some degree, right? I have not seen Kamala up close and personal, right? But she also shares phenotypes with black people. I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my neck, right? But let's say Kamala, hypothetically, right? She didn't grow up with her father. We know this part already. I'm not spoiling anything for anybody who didn't know. She didn't grow up with her father. She could have easily, presented herself to the world when she became a public figure as like, yeah, I might be half black, but I grew up with my Indian mom, grew up mostly in Indian culture, might have went to Jamaica a few times, but I've always seen myself as Indian more than I do black, and I wouldn't want to step on the toes of people who have always identified as black, right? Like the Tyler defense or the Coloreds defense, like in South Africa. The Coloreds in South Africa say, we don't want to identify as black because our lived experiences as lighter skinned, mixed, multiracial black people in South Africa gives us a different experience and outlook on life. So it's not the same as being, phenotypically black, like Simon Hill keeps it trill in South Africa, right? So she could have played that card, but she didn't. She always identified as black. And that's possibly because also in America, like she's going to be viewed and treated as black, like other black people like me might see her and say, man, ain't these crackers crazy? You know what I mean? When black people all alone, like, man, these crackers be, like, man, they be getting me. They be getting me. You get what I'm saying? So she might have been getting that all her life. You know what I mean? Plus, we also know there's a lot of anti-blackness in the Indian world. Not all Indians are anti-black, but there's a lot of anti-blackness in their culture, right? And I'm not saying Indian culture is a monolith because there's multiple languages and multiple different people who exist on the Indian subcontinent. You get what I'm saying? But yeah, she didn't have to, I would say, but she's identified herself as black, right? So let's start running with that narrative at least. Okay, I'm going to continue here. I had a written speech based on the assumption that Hillary Clinton would become our first woman president. As I went on stage to greet my supporters, I left that draft behind. I looked out at the room. It was packed with people from the floor to the balcony. Many were in a state of shock as they watched the national returns. I told the crowd we had a task in front of us. I said the stakes were high. We had to be committed to bringing our country together, to doing what was required to protect our fundamental values and ideals. I thought of Alexander and all the children when I posed the question. question. Do we retreat or do we fight? I say we fight, and I intend to fight. I went home that night with my extended family, many of whom were staying with us. We all went into our respective rooms, changed into sweats from our saris, and then joined one another in the living room. Some of us were sitting on couches, others on the floor, cross legged. We all planted ourselves in front of the television while the uncle was snake charming. No one really knew what to say or do. Each of us was trying to cope in our own way. I sat down on the couch with Doug and ate an entire family sized bag of classic Doritos. This girl, yo, Kamala's pH balance is bad. I put in the chat, FMK. We're going to play FMK today. I don't know if I can hang out or marry Kamala because every time you see this woman snacking on something, it's this high sodium, high fructose, high fructose diet. Low key, she got the same diet as Trump. Let's give it a buck. Trump's farts probably smell horrendous because all he does is swallow like KFC and McDonald's, right? But every time we see Kamala, she's munching on Doritos. Man, her pH balance smell crazy. Man, what did Webby tell us? What did Little Fat tell us? Pardon. She cooked, she cleaned, never smelled like onion rings. Kamala got red fingertips from eating all them damn hot Doritos. I'm sorry. She said she didn't share a single chip. Girl, get out my house. Get out my house. Kamala is a smash and regret. Because you can't be eating all that junk food, girl. You can't be eating all that junk food. Anyway, but I did know this. One campaign was over, but another was about to begin. A campaign that called on us all to enlist. This time, a battle for the soul of our nation. In the years since, we've seen an administration align itself with white supremacists at home and cozy up to dictators abroad. Rip babies from their mother's arms in grotesque violation of their human rights. Give corporations and the wealthy huge tax cuts while ignoring the middle class. Derail our fight against climate change. Sabotage healthcare and imperil a women's right to control her own body. All while lashing out at seemingly everything and everyone, including the very idea of a free and independent press. We are better than this. Americans know we're better than this, but we're going to have to prove it. We're going to have to fight for it. On July 4th, 1992, one of my heroes and inspirations, Thurgood Marshall, gave a speech that deeply resonates today. We cannot play ostrich, he said. Democracy just cannot flourish amid fear. Liberty cannot bloom amid hate. Justice cannot take root amid rage. America must get to work. We must dissent from the indifference. We must dissent from the apathy. We must dissent from the fear, the hatred, and the mistrust. This book grows out of that call to action and out of my belief that our fight must begin and end with speaking truth. I believe there is no more important and consequential antidote for these times than a reciprocal relationship of trust. You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in a relationship of trust is that we speak truth. It matters what we say, what we mean, the value we place on our words, and what they are worth to others. We cannot solve our most intractable problems unless we are honest about what they are, unless we are willing to have difficult conversations and accept what facts make plain. We need to speak the truth that racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and anti-Semitism are real in this country, and we need to confront those forces. We need to speak truth that, with the exception of Native Americans, we all descend from people who weren't born on our shores, whether our ancestors came to America willingly with hopes of a prosperous future, or forcibly on a slave ship, or desperately to escape a harrowing past. I really, really hate when people say we're a nation of immigrants. I feel like it should be reflexive and mandatory, not by the barrel of a gun, right? But reflexive and mandatory for Americans to say we are a nation descended of indigenous people, immigrants, and slaves. People who were forcibly brought here. Because I hate when they say we're a nation of immigrants. There's a whole section of people who didn't choose to come. We didn't choose to come. So let's include that in our speech now. And it shouldn't be so toxic, right? I know in America, just speaking about slavery becomes polarizing and it's a polemic for a lot of people, but it shouldn't be. It should be natural and reflexive to say, yeah, a lot of Americans are descended from people who were forced to come here on ships as slaves. But continuing here. We cannot build an economy that gives dignity and decency to American workers unless we first speak truth that we are asking people to do more with less money and to live longer with less security. Wages haven't risen in 40 years, even as the costs of healthcare, tuition, and housing have soared. The middle class is living paycheck to paycheck. We must speak truth about our mass incarceration crisis, that we put more people in prison than any other country on earth, for no good reason. We must speak truth about police brutality, about racial bias, about the killing of unarmed black men. Preach, I didn't see nothing about this in Trump's book. I ain't see nothing about speaking truth about the racism, systemic racism in our nation. Trump avoided all those questions. Euro stepped those questions. Anyway, we must speak truth about pharmaceutical companies that push addictive opioids on unsuspecting communities, and payday lenders and for profit colleges that have leached onto vulnerable Americans and overloaded them with debt. We must speak truth about greedy, predatory corporations that have turned deregulation, financial speculation, and climate denialism into creed. And I intend to do just that. Now, she's speaking a good game, but recently Kamala came out and said that she wouldn't ban fracking, even though when she was running for president back in in the 2020 election, right back in 2019. Right, she was, saying she would ban fracking. Right, so she is beholden to corporate interests. We're not going to be over here cheerleading for Kamala and acting like she's absolutely perfect or an angel. Right, she's sold out to corporate interests plenty of times. She's sold out to the Israeli lobby. She wants to speak truth about all these injustices happening in America. What about the injustices that America is committing abroad in Gaza? Arming the Israelis, giving them more guns, more bombs, more tanks, so they can continue to drop them on an innocent civilian population. Continuing here. This book is not meant to be a policy platform, much less a 50-point plan. Instead, it is a collection of ideas and viewpoints and stories from my life, from the lives of the many people I've met along the way. Just two more things to mention before we get started. First, my name is pronounced Kamala. 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 That's what I've been saying. Before I even read this book, I was like, that's how I'm going to write it. And I feel like it would be funny if we just made that a meme. Let's just make that a meme. Hashtag comma/law. Right? And then you could do so many things with it. Comma lies about, fracking. Comma lies about the rape of Israelis who were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th. Comma lies about, you know what I'm saying? You can make so many things. They're not funny. I am not funny, guys. I'm struggling. I'm just waiting for like Felix Biederman from Chapo Trap House to like discover my channel and just roast me mercilessly for my lack of humor, for my lack of self-awareness, for just how horribly I go about trying to educate the people on politics and the world. Yeah, I'm pretty bad at everything I do, which is why there's one person in the chat, but I love my book react series because I love reading and I love educating myself, right? And continuing here. First, my name is pronounced Kamala, like the punctuation mark. It means lotus flower, which is a symbol of significance in Indian culture. A lotus grows underwater, its flower rising above the surface while its roots are planted firmly in the river bottom. And second, I want you to know how personal this is for me. This is the story of my family. It is the story of my childhood. It is the story of the life I have built since then. You'll meet my family and my friends, my colleagues, and my team. I hope you will cherish them as I do, and through my telling, see that nothing I have ever accomplished could have been done on my own. Kamala 2018. All right, continuing here. So we're going to chapter 1, for the people. I think this is her campaign slogan right now, which is hard. A bit co-opting of like, the Black Panther Party's rhetoric and like, Shirley Chisholm's rhetoric and stuff like that. Kamala for the people. But it's also like indicative of her roots in the yay area. Yay. Anyway. I still remember the first time I walked into the Alameda County Superior Courthouse in Oakland, California, as an employee. It was 1988 during the last summer of law school, and I, along with 9 others, had been offered a summer internship in the district attorney's office. I had a sense that I wanted to be a prosecutor, that I wanted to be on the front lines of criminal justice reform, that I wanted to protect the vulnerable. But having never seen the job up close, I hadn't made up my mind. That's such a contradictory statement. Okay, there is an argument to be made, like, we need progressive prosecutors and progressive judges just as much as we need, robust defense for criminals or people who are accused of criminal activity in the justice system, right? but to word it that way is a bit weird. I wanted to protect the vulnerable. Now, of course, there will be people who are victims of crime and they do need defense, right? And that's one of the beauties of, I guess, the law system as we have it in America, in the sense that there can be some attempt at recompense and justice, right? But to word it that way, I think there are way more people who are getting railroaded into the system, and they need proper and vigorous defense, more than well, I don't know. I don't know. If if you're gonna go into the criminal justice system being a prosecutor, just be honest and blatant and just say, "Yo, I just want to run and eventually become senator or governor or just land a cushy job at corporate one day." Like, just be real. Anyway, the sun shone brightly on the courthouse. The building stood apart on Lake Merritt, taller and more regal than other buildings nearby. From certain angles, it looked like an architectural marvel from a foreign capital, with its granite base and concrete tower rising to meet a golden rooftop. Though from other angles, it bore an uncanny resemblance to an Art Deco wedding cake. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office is itself something of legend. Earl Warren led the office before becoming Attorney General of California and later one of the most influential Chief Justices of the United States Supreme Court. He was on my mind that morning as I walked past the stunning mosaics in the lobby that depict the early history of California. Warren's words, proclaiming segregation inherently unequal, had taken a long 15 years to make it to Berkeley, California. I was grateful that they had come in time for me. My elementary school class was only the second class in my city to be desegregated through busing. I was the first to arrive at the orientation session. Within a few minutes, the rest of my fellow clerks showed up. There was only one woman among them, Amy Ressner. As soon as the session was over, I went up to her and asked her for her phone number. In that male-dominated environment, it was refreshing to have at least one female colleague. She remains one of my closest friends today, and I'm godmother to her children. I hope I get to meet some other Black Americans. There's one other Black American girl in the humanities department at the university I go to. Didn't want to approach her because she seemed hella young. Plus, like, I'm married too, so I didn't want it to come across weird. I feel weird just like approaching women, even platonically, right? Being a married man. You get what I'm saying? But I would still like to connect and build with other Black Americans who will be studying abroad, right? Because I feel like it's important we connect and, and we stay in touch, because those networks are important. When I'm in class, all I see are like the Pakistanis all together, the Kazakhstanis all together, the Arabs clicked up, and of course the whites like this. You get what I'm saying? And you know how it is when you see Black people abroad, especially the Africans. When you see Africans abroad, right? You try to do the black man head nod. If you're a Black American, you know this. You see another black man, you show respect. You show respect. You show acknowledgement. You do the head nod. You say, "What's up?" That's it. That's it. Just this. This is what the Africans do. They walk past you and act like they all of a sudden the ceiling is just the most amazing thing in the world. You get what I'm saying? It's hard to build those connections. Hard to build those connections. Anyway, continuing here. As summer interns, we understandably had very little power or influence. Our job was primarily to learn and observe, while assisting where we could. It was a chance to get a taste of how the criminal justice system worked from the inside, what it looked like when justice was served and when it wasn't. We were placed with attorneys who were trying all kinds of cases, from DUIs to homicides, and had the chance to be in the room and part of the process of putting together a case. I'll never forget the first time my supervisor was working on a case involving a drug bust. The police had arrested a number of individuals in the raid, including an innocent bystander, a woman who had been at the wrong place at the wrong time and had been swept up in the dragnet. I hadn't seen her. I didn't know who she was or what she looked like. I didn't have any connection to her, except for the report I was reviewing. But there was something about her that caught my attention. It was late on a Friday afternoon, and most people had gone home for the weekend. In all likelihood, a judge wouldn't see her until Monday. That meant she'd have to spend the weekend in jail. Does she work weekends? Is she going to have to explain to her employer where she was? Is she going to get fired? Even more important, I knew she had young children at home. Do they know she's in jail? They must think she did something wrong. Who's taking care of them right now? Is there even someone who can? sorry, Child Protective Services might get called. My God, she could lose her kids. Everything was on the line for this woman, her family, her livelihood, her standing in the community, her dignity, her liberty, and yet she'd done nothing wrong. I rushed to the clerk of the court and asked to have the case called that very day. I begged, I pleaded. If the judge could just return to the bench for 5 minutes, we could get her released. All I could think about was her family and her frightened children. Finally, as the minutes in the day wound down, the judge returned. I watched and listened as he reviewed her case, waiting for him to give the order. Then, with the pound of a gavel, just like that, she was free. She'd get to go home to her children in time for dinner. I never did get the chance to meet her, but I'll never forget her. Beautiful story. Sad that we have a criminal justice system like this, where people, are kept in jail over the weekend. Like, what's wrong with having like court like 24 hours? Because they arrest people 24 hours. You get what I'm saying? It's so crazy to say, like, okay, you're accused of a crime, you get arrested on Friday, right? And you are innocent until proven guilty under the law. And yet you have to wait until some fat ass judge gets finished with his 2 day holiday to some lake in rural Texas, right? To let you out on Monday for, I don't know, getting into a fight at the bar or something. You got to spend 2 days in jail, even though you are technically innocent under the law. I feel like it should be mandatory in courts all across America to have 24-hour jail service, right? If you can get a Big Mac any time of the day, you should be able to get your ass out of jail any time of the day, or at least have your bond set, bail set, whatever, depending on the severity of the crime, I guess. But yeah, continuing here. It was a defining moment in my life. It was the crystallization of how, even on the margins of the criminal justice system, the stakes were extraordinarily high and intensely human. It was a realization that, even with the limited authority of an intern, people who cared could do justice. It was revelatory, a moment that proved how much it mattered to have compassionate people working as prosecutors. Years before I would be as a major prosecutor's office, elected to run a major prosecutor's office. Sorry, let me restart that. Years before I would be elected to run a major prosecutor's office, this was one of the victories that mattered the most. I knew she was going home, and I knew the kind of work I wanted to do and who I wanted to serve. The courthouse wasn't far from where I grew up. I was born in Oakland, California in 1964, and spent the formative years of my childhood living on the boundary between Oaktown and Berkeley, smoking. My father, Donald Harris, was born in Jamaica in 1938. He was a brilliant student who immigrated to the United States after being admitted to the University of California at Berkeley. He went there to study economics and would go on to teach economics at Stanford, where he remains a professor emeritus. My mother's life began thousands of miles to the east in southern India. Shyamala Gopalan was the oldest of 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. Like my father, she was a gifted student, and when she showed a passion for science, her parents encouraged and supported her. She graduated from the University of Delhi at 19. And she didn't stop there. She applied to a graduate program at Berkeley, a university she'd never seen, in a country she'd never visited. It's hard for me to imagine how difficult it must have been for her parents to let her go. Commercial jet travel was only just starting to spread globally. It wouldn't be a simple matter to stay in touch. Yet when my mother asked permission to move to California, my grandparents didn't stand in the way. She was a teenager when she left home for Berkeley in 1958 to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology on her way to becoming a breast cancer researcher. A crazy story, right? And as somebody who values education and is going back to school right now, I just find these stories so inspiring, right? Of people who are taking such big risks to travel, to grow the mind, to achieve great things. So her parents are admirable for that, right? Continuing here. My mother was expected to return to India after she completed her degree. Her parents had an arranged marriage. It was assumed my mother would follow a similar path, but fate had other plans. She and my father met and fell in love at Berkeley while participating in the civil rights movement. Her marriage and her decision to stay in the United States were the ultimate acts of self-determination and love. My parents had 2 daughters together. My mother received her PhD at age 25. Wow. The same year I was born. My beloved sister, Maya, came 2 years later. Family lore has it that in both pregnancies, my mother kept working right up to the moment of delivery. One time, her water broke while she was at the lab, and the other while she was making apple strudel. In both cases, knowing my mom, she would have insisted on finishing up before she went to the hospital. Ha 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 ha. Hardworking Indian story. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, we get it. We get it. She worked hard. I work hard, nigga. I work hard. I work harder than you. All right. Those early days were happy and carefree. I loved the outdoors, and I remember that when I was a little girl, my father wanted me to run free. He would turn to my mother and say, "Just let her run, Shyamala," and then he'd turn to me and say, "Run, Kamala." Kamala, as fast as you can, run. I would take off the wind in my face with the feeling that I could do anything. It's no wonder I have many memories of my mother putting band-aids on my scraped knees. Cute story. Cute story. Hold on, I gotta open up Zoom to check the chat. All right, gotta make sure don't miss any classes. Hold on, let me make sure I make it to my group on time. Because while I love doing the live streams, this is not the bread and butter. Okay, so if anybody joins my class, I gotta hop off and talk to them. All right, continuing here. So, music filled our home. My mother loved to sing along to gospel, from Aretha Franklin's early work to the Edwin Hawkins singers. She had won an award in India for her singing, and I loved hearing that voice. My father cared about music just as much as my mother. He had an extensive jazz collection, so many albums that they filled all the shelving against one of the walls. Every night, I would fall asleep to the sounds of Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, or Miles Davis. Let's keep it a buck. Some of those jazz records are chaotic and crazy, right? So I doubt she was falling asleep like peacefully. You get what I'm saying? She was kind of mad that they were blasting that. Anyway, I just got a student coming into my live stream, coming into my class. So I have to cut this short and hop on and talk to them. Sorry, everybody, but catch y'all tomorrow. I'll pick up here on page 16. Might read for an hour or two. Y'all be easy. Peace.